main bookshelf. Oh, we're
Oh, okay. Do I have to press okay in order to okay, I'm in charge, I guess.
Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Ariana. I'm the events coordinator here at Love Sweet Arrow, and we are here today to celebrate the upcoming releases of Second Chance Romance and the Glowing Life of Leanne Wu. If we were in person, there would be applause. I will go ahead now and pass it off to Mindy and Olivia and Emma to do introductions. But if you have any questions, please put them in the YouTube chat and everyone will answer those throughout the event. Okay, over to
Love,
you all.
thank you. Love Sweet Arrow. We're so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be here with two of my favorite people and two amazing books. And I thought we'd start by asking our two authors to kind of do a very brief intro. Plus, can you give us like a 1, 2 sentence, like capsule kind of pitch for your book? And Mindy, would you like to get us started?
Sure. Hi, I am Mindy Hung. You may also know me as Opal Way and Ruby Lang. The Glowing Life of Leanne Wu is my first non-romance book, really, and it is about a woman who she's a midlife midwife. She's in her 40s and her daughter is off to university. She's got a sort of difficult relationship with her mother, and she has attracted the interest of a younger man. And her hands are also mysteriously, suddenly beginning to glow for no apparent reason. And so she's already got her hands full, and now they are glowing. And this is the story.
And it is sexy and smart, and it is everything that I didn't know that I wanted in terms of like a midwife, like fantasy with a healthy side dish of romance. Okay, Olivia, can you introduce yourself and pitch us your book?
I'm terrible at elevator pitches. I am never 1 to 2 sentences. And also, I should say that Mindy's book came out actually this last Tuesday, so it
Mhm.
is already out, ready to be purchased at fine retailers everywhere. I am Olivia Dade. I write romantic comedies, both contemporary and paranormal. My book that just came out, that will be coming out this upcoming Tuesday, is Second Chance Romance. Basically, the premise is that there are two not quite childhood sweethearts. They never quite got together, although they both were into each other in high school. They lose touch 20 years later. She sees an obituary for him, comes back to town, sort of punched by unexpected grief, comes back into town to pay her respects, only to find him cranky, working at his bakery, and very much alive. So this is not a zombie situation. That was not rom-com. Back in August, that he is actually alive and has never been dead. And then he has to try to convince her to stay. Like the one that got away, make sure she doesn't get away a second time. And I would love to hear about Emma's book. I would like an introduction to Emma and to hear about her book, which is in progress and coming out next.
Okay, so hi, if we don't know each other, I'm Emma and I write contemporary romance. And my book that's coming out next fall is called You, Me, and the Conspiracy. And it is about two history professors who uncover this revolutionary era conspiracy that is not quite dead. And they end up having to sort of go on the run together and investigate this conspiracy and expose it, and or else they're going to become its latest victims. And that will be out at some point next fall.
That's such a great title. And also, going on the run together is just like my dream. So, anyway, love it.
Well, I hope everyone will love it. But let's jump in with our first question. And I think a question for both of you. We'll do some questions for both Mindy and Olivia, and some questions that are sort of more tailored to one of them. But let's talk about work. both of your books, in really delightful ways, have characters whose work lives play like an integral part in the story. So, like Carl is a baker and Molly is an audiobook narrator in Second Chance Romance, and then Leanne is a midwife in The Glowing Life of Leanne Wu. I'd love to hear about how you did the research for this, because those are not jobs that I think the two of you have. And then, two, sort of how you see their work lives as affecting kind of the plot or the characterization or just what happens in the book. And Olivia, would you like to take that one first?
Sure. Right. So as far as research, because Molly is sort of on a break, she has some time off from her narration and
Mhm.
is in Harlot's Bay. She's not working while she's gone. And which was sort of a shame because I actually did a ton of research and did interviews with Kelsey Navarro Foster, who has narrated several of my books, talked to me for quite a long time, was so kind. So like I know a lot about it, but I did not actually use that. So it was mostly using the bakery, Carl being a
Mhm.
baker, like a small town baker. When I lived in Maryland, when I first moved there for several years, I actually worked as a bakery clerk,
Mhm.
just in the front at a small town bakery. Not, I'll be blunt, sorry, Perry, not a hugely successful at the time town bakery, and one that I think had some probably should have had some issues with the health department. But keeping that aside, but I do know some of the aspects, some of those aspects I did not want to replicate in Carl's Bakery, but there were things about the scheduling, sort of the tasks that need to be done on a daily basis that I already kind of knew. But then actually I did, I looked into research for other bakers, obviously. There's a lot of articles about sort of their daily schedules, the sort of tasks that need to be done that I didn't
Mhm.
see as much of because I was out front most of the time.
Mhm.
And then I spent a long time looking at, yeah, at health and safety regulations because I did not want it's important to me to actually show work without going into too much detail, show work as it actually is for people.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of opportunity in that specificity. There's a lot of opportunity for sort of character work.
Mhm.
And there's also a lot of opportunity for humor, like Carl with his beard net. Because I mean, if he has a beard, he's got to be wearing a
Mhm.
beard net when he's back there. And so that was important to me, and I just wanted to make sure he wouldn't be shut down by the local authorities
That would put a
over
crimp in the romance.
over the violations. I want to make sure people who worked in the food industry reading the book would not be like just revolted or like, very upset about the portrayal of that. And why is work so important in my books? There are some people who their work is sort of like a separate thing that they have to do and then it's done and then they
Mhm.
live their life really truly outside of work. And
Mhm.
there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, I admire that in a lot of ways. Now, sometimes that may be because they don't actually enjoy their work, which
Mhm.
I feel bad about that. But sometimes it's just because that is not where they find meaning in their life, and that's
Mhm.
fine. Uh, Go against capitalism. I think that's fantastic. But it is true that I am someone who typically has derived a lot of joy and meaning in my life and also my social circle. But my life has for the most part of my life revolved around work
Mhm.
and my family and loved ones and friends, but the work has been central. And I think that what someone chooses to do with their life and how they choose to spend a good chunk of their time says something about the opportunities that they've been given in their
Mhm.
life. It says something, depending on whether they're happy or unhappy in their work, about the things that they value, the things that they find interesting. And
Mhm.
I find it very revealing about character and also just find it much more realistic. People, unless you're on vacation, realistically, you're spending good chunk of your time at work. Like that has to influence what's happening in the book on some level if the book is
Mhm.
taking place when you're actually at work,
Mhm.
So that's why it's important to me.
Yeah. Good answer. Mindy, can you tell us about Leanne and her midwifery?
Yeah. So I do tend in my writing life, I write a lot of medical professionals. I've written a
Mhm.
lot of doctors and um, maybe some nurses in there. I can't even remember. But the thing is that for many years of my professional life, I was a health editor, a medical editor,
Mhm.
and I talked to a lot of doctors in my life and tried to learn the things that they learned. I do not at all know how to practice medicine or anything like that. But like I have just spent a lot of my life talking to people who are doctors. And my mother also was, I should say, a nurse midwife when she was in Taiwan, many, many, many years ago. And so these two things influenced, I always knew that Leanne was going to be a midwife.
Mhm.
I always knew that that was going to happen. Um, but researching it was really difficult because like some of these scenes take place in like Taiwan. Like
Mhm.
there's description of like a woman who has like a pregnancy complica or a birth complication, and she's if anybody's squeamish, you can mute me for the next 2 minutes, maybe. I don't know. But like there's a lot of blood. And one of the things I had to research was like does how do you stop this in
Mhm.
1960s Taiwan? Like what are the drugs that are used? What are the methods that you would have to use to make sure that she doesn't lose too much blood? And this is filtered through the memories of Leanne's mother, who is
Mhm.
telling her this story. So I was like, I had to make my best guess, and maybe I don't even remember at this point. I might have ended cutting that out, but like some of this is just like some of the things that I had to research. I'm just hoping for the best, honestly. I'm hoping for the best. I probably got stuff wrong, and I did, I talked to people, I asked questions, I looked stuff, I Googled so much, but there's probably stuff that's wrong. At the same time, I do go back to writing about people who deal with bodies because I think they're weird and fascinating, and they really are a big part of like they're the thing that you walk around in. They're a big influence on your life. And a lot of the things that happen to us in our lives are, built around how your body is feeling and how you are doing. And I love, especially like when I'm writing about people who are health professionals, like putting them in maybe sometimes in the situation that a little bit parallel to the situation that they are an expert in. So, Leanne is a midwife and she helps women or people, she helps people. I'm sorry about that. She helps people who have something inside of them that they don't necessarily understand, like something growing inside of them that they don't necessarily understand and that they will put out into this world. And it's scary and they have to deal with it. And that is a little bit what is happening with Leanne. She's got
Mhm.
something in her body and she doesn't know what's happening. And I love the idea of like just putting those experiences like into play, into just like getting her to have to deal with something that she also deals with professionally in a way.
Yeah.
So
And I can say, I mean, I think those scenes, I'm not a medical professional, but for as a person who's given birth, I thought those scenes had so much verisimilitude and they were so beautifully written. And also, I mean, as you were talking, I realized one of the things I love about your book is the interplay between the really rich interiority, but also the body stuff, which I think you do so well. And I would never have like described your work that way. But as you were talking about that interest in like embodied life, I was like, yes, I totally see that. And in that interplay also with interiority. I think this is a good segue to our question about sex. And so I think we should I think we should tackle the question about sex. And
But,
so wait,
but
yeah.
wait, but before we do, one of my favorite things about both your writings, because you
Mhm.
know that the fan clubs for Mindy Hahn and Emma Barry, I am the
or like their
president,
circle.
also a client. So, one of the things I love most about both your writing is the importance of work in the writing. So I want to hear a little bit about sort of how you feel about incorporating work in your writing, Emma, and like sort of why that's important to you.
I'd love to talk about that. I very much identified with what you were saying as terms of knowing that I am a person who probably has over-identified with their job, knowing that that is probably super unhealthy, but doing it anyway. And one of the things I wanted to write about in my upcoming book was the years that I spent as a contingent faculty member. So I'm an academic. I was an adjunct for years. I am now fortunate enough to be full-time, but trying to understand the years when I was an adjunct and like why that felt so bad. And like I don't know, even now that I've written 90,000 words about it, I don't know that I necessarily have an answer for that. But it was just kind of like, why does this feel so bad to be working in this field, but to not have the job I went to graduate school for? And like, why do I feel so bad about that? And how did I let my research interests come to define me so much? And then like, why, when I didn't get that job, was it so crushing? And it took years and years. I'm 10 years past my PhD now to have enough space to feel like I could sort of give that narrative to a character and to be able to write about it with any sort of like distance. And I mean, not objectivity, but something next door to objectivity, maybe like somebody else's subjectivity that wasn't my subjectivity. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I essentially wrote the upcoming book to like excise that. Like I was hoping, I think, to like write it and like exactly to like achieve catharsis, to like rip it out of myself, and then it can be the reader's problem. It doesn't have to be my problem anymore. But that sense of like, I know it's unhealthy how much of me is tied in with my job, and that's messy and I should stop that. But I have not yet managed to stop doing that. So I don't know, I'm gonna just have to keep writing about work until I solve that riddle.
Lucky us, I guess.
Or unlucky you, I don't know.
Our
Okay.
dysfunction is our reader's gate.
I guess or people are like, go to therapy, Emma. Stop writing all these weird books about all the jobs you've had, because that's what I keep doing. But I'm out of jobs at this point, so it's all going to be fiction from here on out. Okay, let's talk about sex. So the question is this. I'd like to hear about the role that you think sex plays in your stories. And Olivia suggested this part of the question, and I think it's really brilliant. If you did have to, or if you could write a story that didn't have sex on the page, because all three of us have written sex on the page for the vast majority of what we've written, how do you think it would change what's going on? Or would you want to tell a story that didn't have that component to it? And Mindy, let's start with you.
Oh, so you know what? This book, so this is sort of a book club book, women's fiction book. And when I was writing this, I think a version that you read, Emma, had less sex than it currently does. Because I also thought that was part of the genre convention for this book. It was really important to me to have two things in this book. And one is that, Leanne is 40 something, and I wanted her to be desirable, because I think that's a really important thing to portray in a woman that age, because, but the other thing is, it was really important that she also be horny. So, because also like this is an age where hormones are raging on you. It's a new adolescence in a lot of ways. There's just stuff going on in your body, as I keep emphasizing, that is a little bit unexpected, out of control. I don't even know what to say, but like, so it was important to me that, even if the door was a little bit more closed, it was always a little ajar. It was important that sex be in the story, even if it wasn't like descriptions of what was happening. So I guess I always implied sex. Well, probably more than implied, but there's always sex in the story. I don't think I would want to write the story if it didn't have her desire and her desirability. So
Yeah, and I have read the published version as well, and you were right. There's a little more heat, but it's fascinating because I guess there's not a lot of sex in terms of page count, but you're right that like her desire casts a long shadow in the book, and so like it feels like a very sexy book, even if there's not that much sex in an absolute sense. Olivia, how about you tell us about second chance romance, and just about sex and your work in general?
I mean, I think that I read the whole gamut
Mhm,
of romance from like kisses only
mhm,
to erotic romance. So, I mean, I kind of had, just as the airlines told you, I had a choice. It came to how much sex to put in my books, but from the beginning, I've generally put in, with very few exceptions, at least one sort of open door, pretty detailed sex scene. I think part of that is just because I do find it enjoyable to read and I
mhm,
find it enjoyable to write. And I think that it is, like, on the most basic level, it is a part of people's lives that is important to them. It
mhm,
is a way for couples to sort of, I mean, it also can serve a function in the story, but above all else, for many people, it's just fun to read and
mhm,
fun to write, which that I think in some cases that's enough. In my case, also because I'm writing fat characters who are often sort of
mhm,
desexualized, or whose
mhm,
sexuality is often sort of portrayed as being humorous,
mhm,
that someone who is fat could desire or be desirable, that is
mhm,
sort of a point of humor. It was
mhm,
important to me to show, like, similarly to what Mindy was saying about sort of, a character in their 40s, to
mhm.
show, again, desire and desirability, because and make it not be, I mean, you can laugh as you have sex, but that the fact that they are desired and that they desire
Mhm,
is not a joke.
mhm,
Uh, and that it can be sexy and you don't have to be thin to have good sex or to be desirable. So I that is part of the role it plays in my stories. It also does reveal character,
mhm,
reveal, sort of move the plot along, like what
mhm,
happens during the sex, what happens after the sex,
mhm.
sort of makes a difference in the story. The reason this question I actually made us all answer, and it's because I actually sort of got told by somebody, said to me very rightly, they're like, if which is not gonna happen, but if Second Chance Romance were ever made into, like, a Hallmark movie, it
Mhm,
would have to have all the sex removed. And I started thinking about it, I'm like, and they said, "Do you even think that the story would work without that?"
mhm,
And so I started thinking about, sort of, what is the function of sex within the book, other than
mhm,
just all the things that we just talked about? And in this case, I don't think I'm giving too much away because it's pretty early in the book. Like, Molly is basically ready to go from pretty early
mhm,
on, because for her, there is more of a separation of I think she is somewhat fooling herself to think that she could have sex with Carl without emotions becoming too involved. But
mhm,
I think she has more of a separation of the two, maybe in part because her job is narrating,
mhm,
like, erotic romance is part of her job. So there is a sort of distance that she can impose. And
mhm.
actually that is sort of how I saw her using sex, was actually as a way of keeping him at a distance. So keeping things physical rather than emotional, and that she could use sex to do that.
Yeah.
And that for him, he is not going to want to do that right away, because number one, he cannot separate the two
Mhm,
in the way that she can. And also that he knows she's using it as a distancing mechanism. He
mhm,
senses that and does not want to allow it.
mhm,
Like, that he wants to sort of, for her to stay, he's
mhm,
got to get her, not just give her orgasms, but like make her trust him and make her want to stay emotionally. And
mhm.
that is not necessarily something that he can achieve if they fall into bed right away.
Yeah.
Because and so could I tell that story without sex? It would have to be, Molly would have to sort of each distance herself in other ways. But I
Mhm,
did think that the sex issue, while the middle of the book is not like, it's not all about what will they or will they not have sex. It's actually about, will will she will she trust him enough that he's willing to have sex with her?
yeah.
Does he trust that she is going to stay in his life enough to have sex with her?
Mhm,
And so it's really sex as a mechanism to show various types of trust. But there are probably other ways you can do it, but none that I would enjoy as much.
Mhm. Yes, no,
What
I agree.
what about you, Emma?
I much like Mindy with the last book that I wrote, it was a different subgenre for me. And when I initially produced the first draft, I wrote very little sex in it because I didn't know how we were going to sell it. And I wanted to kind of leave the door open to potentially sell it as a thriller with romantic elements versus like as an academic adventure romance. And so when it ended up in the latter kind of category, as I have been editing it, I've added a lot more sex to the book. In part because yay, but I think it is there for these characters, intimacy is really important. And like being in this forced situation on the run, they also come to terms with how lonely they both are and how much they've given up in many ways for their academic careers, and how like this is like the most time they've spent with another person in a long time. And so like the intimacy that develops between them is initially, in terms of like a friendship and in terms of like sharing things they haven't told anyone else. And then the sex grows out of that. And as I began to make those scenes more descriptive, add more of those little moments of physical contact, they felt really important. And I was like, oh, this is one of the things that was like wrong with the first draft, was like there wasn't enough sex. And not just like penetration, but just that there wasn't enough physical manifestations of like the emotional intimacy that was developing between them. And so I mean, could I at some point develop a story that doesn't need that or where there's not a dimension? Absolutely. But I do think, in the same way that you've both articulated, I found it to be really useful for doing characterization work. And I, at least in the short term, plan to keep writing it that way. I want to talk about the past next, because obviously, as we can tell, both of your stories, from what you've already said about them, are very much about our relationship to the past, whether that is, the shared past that Carl and Molly have and the way that that complicates this trust issue between them, but also the familial past that Leanne does not know at the beginning of The Glowing Life of Lan Wu that she has to uncover, and the way that the past both becomes a mechanism for the unusual events that are happening, but then also kind of the way to close the door on those. I'm trying like very carefully to walk around spoilers, but it becomes both a cause but also a solution to the things that are happening in the town. So I would love to hear what it is that you see as being the relationship between past and present, as much as we can kind of not spoil these texts, and what it is you were trying to say about the relationship between the past and the present. And I keep making Mindy go first. So Olivia, do you want to take that one first?
Sure. I mean, you have to. eh, I mean, I think a lot of sort of there is the most basic answer here, which is
Mhm,
I've always loved childhood sweetheart stories.
mhm,
And they are not quite childhood sweethearts, but that is catnip for me.
mhm,
And so I wanted to sort of play with that. There is the more complicated sort of issue of the fact that, my academic background was as a historian.
mhm,
So like my job was to look at the past for many years, was to
mhm,
look at the past. And then I worked at Colonial Williamsburg
mhm,
and as a history teacher.
mhm, mhm,
My job was to look at the past and see how it influences sort of where we are today
mhm,
as, a world and as a country, because I did mostly US history. Um, and then eh, even on a more personal level, like
mhm,
I've had a lot of therapy over the years where you sort of explore, like, where does this come from? Like,
mhm,
whatever it is that is the reason you're in therapy for, like, where does it come from? And sometimes it's, behaviors that may be more recent, whatever. But a lot of times it is habits and ideas about yourself and other people and how you interact with other people and what you can expect from them and what kind of person you are that comes from like
mhm,
your past. And like Molly and Carl are in their late 30s. They have a lot of history together. They have a lot of history separately. And so they're going to be bringing all those things to the table. And and a lot of what happens in the book is, between them, but also individually. Particularly, Carl just had an obituary in the paper.
mhm,
So it is a moment for him to sort of take stock of his life
Mhm.
And then he has someone he hasn't seen in 20 years come back into his life to take stock of like, how has he changed? Or how is he, I think more importantly for him, how has he not changed
Mhm.
in 20 years? And if he wants things to go differently, what needs to happen? Not just with Molly, but within himself.
Yeah.
What needs to happen for things to be different for him? Like, after 20 years of, in some ways, building a wonderful life for himself in the community, but a certain amount of stagnation too.
Mhm.
Um, in Molly's case, her revisiting a town that she hasn't seen in 20 years, I think for her, it's to look at, yeah, what things haven't changed for her, but actually for her, more importantly, looking at how she's changed in
Mhm.
20 years, because the person who is confident in her own judgment,
Mhm.
like, and moving through the world, she's divorced for a couple years and it's messy divorce, and
Mhm.
there's still her ex is sort of still hanging around the margins of her life, not in a romantic way, but in various ways. And she is not the girl she was when she was 18. And in some ways, that's not great because
Mhm.
the girl she was when she was 18, like, had a lot more faith in her own judgment. And so to sort of reevaluate herself and sort
Mhm.
of look at that part of her history.
Mhm.
My first book I ever wrote, which will never leave my hard drive, I called it Past Perfect. And it
Mhm.
was set at Colonial Williamsburg. And I liked the name Past Perfect because I also was an English nerd. But I just like the idea of the sort of revisiting your past and
Mhm.
trying to like make it right,
Yeah.
you know? So that is sort of obviously a thematic. I mean, I wrote that 11 years ago. That is sort of thematically something I return to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what
Um,
about, I mean, you've got a Revolutionary War conspiracy, so
I
talk to us
do, but
about the
I
past.
will very, very briefly, but I want to be sure we hear about from Mindy too. So, I was obviously thinking about these conversations we've been having as a country about, how should we remember American history? And like, these kind of competing narratives. I mean, many competing narratives, but one of them about, the founding fathers had a, perfect vision, which we absolutely clearly understand now. And there's been no deviation. And like, why can't we just like return to their obviously very singular like meaning, and my frustration with that. I mean, I wrote this book in part just because I really disliked George Washington and like wanted to sort of like wanted to sort of like dismantle like the mythology of George Washington. It is very much a dismantling of the mythology of George Washington, but also thinking about the toll that studying the past takes on the people who do it, and sort of like what that takes from you to be an academic, what it takes from you to work in academies that don't really seem to value knowledge, and that have become difficult places politically to be in. And so, sort of not just how do we remember the past, but also when we try to remember those in very complicated institutions or in a very complicated political climate, like what does that do to us? And so that was sort of my goals. But Mindy, I want to hear about the past and particularly familial past in Glowing Life of Leanne Wu.
Yeah, so it's interesting you were saying that the about talking about the toll on
Hmm.
people who study the past. And in a lot of ways, this is coming at it from the opposite direction. Like
Hmm.
Leanne, her problem is that she
Hmm.
doesn't know a lot of her past,
Yeah.
and she doesn't know that familial history. It one of the first incidents in the book is like she and her mother and her daughter get this box of photographs of, and one of the things that they do once a week is that they go through the photographs, and Shuling, who is
Hmm.
Leanne's mother, like tells them about who the pictures are, who's in these pictures. And Leanne realizes that she does not know one single person in these
Hmm.
pictures. She doesn't know anything about her past. Her mother has her reasons for concealing some painful memories. Um, and Leanne has learned incidentally about a lot of things to do with Taiwan. But like they're from Taiwan. No, I should say her mother is from Taiwan and came to Canada, to practice as an OBGYN. And then Leanne came as a toddler. And when they look at these pictures, they pull out a picture of a woman who Leanne's mother says, well, she was the one who took care of you when you were in Taiwan. And, she was your first caregiver, and it's my great aunt. And Leanne has no memory of this woman. Like,
Mhm.
she has no memory of course, she's a toddler, but, the fact that they've never talked about it, and the fact that Leanne doesn't know is one of the most painful and
Mhm.
difficult to reconcile things about this. She basically starts learning, okay, so this woman, her Ipa, her great aunt, is, could have been magical too. And
Mhm.
maybe this is the key to explaining why Leanne is having these strange things happen to her, why her hands are glowing, but she doesn't know. She never knows enough about it. And at another point, um, Leanne's mother says, we speak some of the same languages, but I
Mhm.
just never know how to talk to you. And I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of this book is about maybe that slippage in
Mhm.
knowledge.
Mhm.
Like, Leanne can learn a lot of things, but she's never going to know exactly what her mother's experience is like. And her
Mhm.
mother, even if she, goes to Taiwan now, which she, would hasn't done actually, um, it's not going to be the same thing. They say the
Mhm.
past is a different country.
Yeah.
It's really a different country. And it's also like her mother's Taiwan is a different Taiwan than exists now.
Mhm.
So there's so much that is missing. And this is also like when I write about this, like I write about it with like a deep sense of like personal loss too, because
Mhm.
my parents are also from Taiwan. They do tell me more than Shuling ever does, but there's still so much that I don't know. Like
Mhm.
I feel like maybe only 10 years ago I knew what it was like living in a house there. Like what is the layout? Where like even simple like things that you would take for granted. I just didn't know. Like I don't know like what are the things that you like ate for breakfast all the time, or like
Mhm.
I don't, what is your experience of school like these are things that I ask, but
Mhm.
some of that knowledge just sort of comes so slowly, and I miss it, and I
Yeah.
think that Leanne really feels that loss.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of breakfast, though, let's talk about food. Because and these segues are amazing. Okay, incredible segues. But food is is so important in both of these books in many ways. Carl is a baker, is a person who is constantly feeding Molly, and then those family dinners at Shuling's house and how they kind of drive the plot forward in Glowing Life of Leanne Wu. I would love to hear about food in these narratives, and specifically, I guess, the symbolic or like figurative associations with food, because I get the sense in both it's not just about the delicious food, and these books will both make you really hungry, but it's not just about the delicious food in the books, but that the food means something else. So Mindy, would you like to get us started?
Oh, sure. Well, the food does a lot of work. I'm going
Mhm.
to focus on these dinners that Shuling has because
Mhm.
I think she really wants she doesn't talk about her past, and she really wants to be close to her daughter Leanne, and she really wants to be close to Lulu, and the way she talks is really has to be through the food in a lot of
Mhm.
ways because she's not good at verbalizing these things. Like the thing about Shuling is like she is a very uh strong idea of how life should be, and is very frustrated by the fact that nobody seems to go along with
Mhm.
what she wants. So food is her way of communicating. And she, one of the things that she does is like I talk about this soup that she makes. It's a cold
Mhm.
soup, and it's like a dessert soup, basically. It's sweet, um, and it is her way of and it's unusual in
Mhm.
North America to have it unless you're, of East Asian origins, like and one of the things that she wants is to share this with her daughter and granddaughter. But like it's a little bit different. Leanne is a little bit more used to having it, but like like it's her attempt to communicate something of the special treats, something of the culture that she grew up with. Um, at the same time, she's also got this urge to really like be strong and protect her family. And that comes through in a lot of really healthy kinds of things that she makes. Like there's a description where, Leanne talks about like sort of fighting her way through some really fibrous vegetables. Because like, and this is again the work that the food has to do for Shuling, like because Shuling really wants these girls, these women to be strong, and she wants them to live good, long lives. She can't express that in any other way, so she makes this food. And it's funny you said it was delicious because it doesn't always taste delicious, I think. That is the thing. She's got these really strong competing things that she wants to bring to her family that she can't say. And the food is trying to do all this, the poor food is trying to do all this work, right? And at another point, like she misses the opportunity to cook. And so she's like, okay, we'll get takeout. And Leanne and Lulu are like, yay. And that strikes my heart as a person who is also trying to get the food to do a lot of work. Like, you ungrateful little kids, like, what's happening here? But like, so I think that is the thing. The food, it's yes, it's a kind of characterization. It's expression of love. It's I don't know if that it's a symbol, like in the sense of like literary symbols, but it is a symbol for Shuling of how she feels and like and what she serves. And also it is for those, people eating it sometimes unpalatable.
Another lovely food moment I thought is when Kenji gets to eat with them for the first time and the clear like intimacy of that. And like he's almost kind of, I think, surprised to be in the kitchen with them in that way. And like that was another, I thought, really lovely food moment where food is kind of doing that work in that way in the text. I really wanted to try the cold soup. That was the one where I was like, this sounds so fascinating. And that was the one I was like, I want to try that. So for what it's worth. Okay, Olivia, tell us about Carl and his baking and what function that serves.
Uh, Carl, in some ways, is not unlike Leanne's mother in that, like, communication is a challenge for Carl, but he cares deeply despite his towering crankiness and desire to be by himself in his back room of his bakery. He does care about others, whether he would admit it or not. And creating the food and especially thinking of knowing what foods are people's favorites and what they enjoy and supplying that to them, even though it literally, I mean, it's very physical work. It's hard work, it's early work, it's long hours, and it's very physical. So like it's going to take a toll on your body at some point. So with back pain and other things that he will work incredibly long hours, often hurting, like, and take on extra tasks to make food for the people he cares about that he knows that they love and that will bring them joy. And that is his way of sort of expressing how he feels while still being able to deny vociferously that he cares. He, the entire time.
I love
But
him.
also, I mean, food, but I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I love him so much.
Um, but food is also, I think, can be sort of a nexus of like a way to demonstrate sort of your trustworthiness and your trust. Like eating someone's food that they have created with their own hands is very intimate. And a willingness to eat that food, like, and to let them control it, which at some point, like at some point in the story, Molly sort of lets him feed her for, I won't go into, it's not like it's not making her childlike. It is sort of a trust exercise. Is a demonstration of trust. Food is also very, I mean, it's intimate, can be intimate emotionally. And one of the things that was a waving red flag for Molly, and she knew it even at the time, but didn't didn't let it stop her. Food was a red flag with her ex-husband, and she doesn't sort of heed what she kind of knows in her deepest heart is that this is a red flag, the way that he is acting around this food
Mhm.
incident. But there's sort of a sunk cost fallacy. You just don't want to
Mhm.
make waves and you're trying to be reasonable, but at least she is. Uh, but it's also, food can be desire. I
Mhm.
mean, food can be physical pleasure.
Yeah.
And that is something that as much as Carl is not willing to have sex with her right away, he can provide her physical pleasure in
Mhm.
another sense and also
Mhm.
prove that he is trustworthy, that he's paying attention, that he's making things, putting forth effort for
Mhm.
her, and making things that will bring her joy and will bring her pleasure.
Mhm.
And but it's without her being able to dismiss it as easily as he senses that she would be able to dismiss like pure just sexual pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. Food is very sensory and very sensual in so many ways. I just wanted to reiterate to anybody who's watching, we would love to get questions from you. I have like a zillion more questions, but we would also be very interested in hearing questions from you. So maybe while those get formulated, if any are coming, I'm going to ask a question just to Mindy, and then I'll have one just for Olivia. And so for Mindy, my question is this. I have read in different interviews that you've done that Glowing Life of Lan Wu was at least partially influenced by your own experiences with perimenopause. And I'm curious if you could sort of talk us through that and sort of how it influenced the book.
Yeah, so it's a great time of my life. Um, So when I first had my first hot flash, I thought I was having heart palpitations and I took myself to the doctor. And then later on, I thought it was maybe a panic attack, because, why not? Um, 2019 was a great year for everybody. Um, but then later I realized that it was probably a hot flash or, something to do with perimenopause. Um, And the thing about them is that they are really physically overwhelming. I
Mhm.
mean, that was what I was reacting to. I felt like my body could not possibly contain all of the energy that seemed
Mhm.
to be coursing through it and coming out of it. Um, and that's kind of, again, bodies are so weird. Like, how are you even managing to contain this or not really contain it very well? And I got really mad about it, honestly. Like, why can't my hot flashes do something interesting and good instead of just
Mhm.
making me like sweaty and annoyed and unhappy? Like, why can't they heat my house? You
Mhm.
know, why can't this new fun anxiety that I'm experiencing give me the ability to change the future,
Mhm.
so that prevent bad things from happening? Why is this happening to me? And I'd already wanted to write like a magical book at this
Mhm.
point with generations. And one of the things that was a problem was I didn't know what form that magic was going to take. And this kind of came up and I thought, okay, why can't I use some of what is happening to me here? So it's not an autobiographical book by any means, but like it's these experiences get transmuted and transformed. And basically that's how you end up with jazz glowing hands in the book. So that was one of the things. And what I was telling a friend of mine about this, she's like, oh, basically you're writing a superhero. And what was interesting about it was like, maybe I am, but I thought about it more and I thought, no, I'm not, because the experience of this is not necessarily positive.
Mhm.
There's something weird and dark about it too. When you're feeling it in your body, like there's something you can't control, something
Mhm.
that could turn either way. And that was something that I wanted to really convey in the book. So, um, so perimenopause really did end up informing a lot of the feeling that went
Mhm.
with this, the not understanding that went with
Mhm.
this book, the searching for and trying to live with the physical feelings that went in this book.
Yeah, I love that. Olivia, my question for you is about prom and reunions. So like, because I was reading, Second Chance Romance, definitely I kept thinking about all of these different sort of pop culture connections, whether it's the, famous enchantment under the sea sequence from Back to the Future, and then of course reunion stuff like Romy and Michelle's high school reunion or Gross Point Blank. So I would love for you to talk to us about sort of how you think what's happening in this book and the big reunion sequence in Second Chance Romance kind of comments on or exists with that other sort of representations of prom and reunions in pop culture.
I think, like the other questions, there is the simple answer. There is the more complex answer. The simple answer, one of the simple answers is I wanted to, I mean, plot-wise, when sort of planning this book, have sort of an end date,
Mhm,
like sort of a ticking time thing that because he Carl has to have an ask for her to stay, but it
mhm,
has to be an ask that is reasonable that works with the fact that she is like a working adult, right?
mhm,
So I thought what would be a reasonable thing that he could say you should stay for and like
mhm,
try to aim for. And sort of when I conceived of them being in their late 30s, just
mhm,
wanted to make the timeline easier, we'll make it around 20 years. And I was like, a reunion would be smart, but it also really works thematically
mhm,
because sort of the reunion is sort of coming face to face
mhm,
with your past and who you used to be and the community that you are still a part of in Carl's case or were a part of in Molly's case and like
mhm,
an evaluation of like, do you want your future
mhm.
to be closer to what it was back then, or do you want your future not to look like the last 20 years?
Yeah.
And so in some cases, literally coming face to face with your past, with people
Mhm,
from your past, and sort of trying to reconcile those things so that you can move forward.
mhm.
And also just reckoning with yourself. So it felt like it would really work as far as like what the book is about.
Yeah.
I also thought that it would be, I came up with the idea for the theme of the reunion
Mhm,
dance, and it tickled me so much.
mhm,
I'm not gonna, again, the book's not out yet, so I don't wanna, when I was like, what would be the funniest way to take a common prom theme for
mhm.
this reunion dance and make it as literal as possible? Because if you yeah, I won't go. Anyway, I got a lot of
It's so
pleasure out
good.
of that.
It's so good though.
It is delightful and people are gonna love it. We do have some questions for the chat, from the chat, so let's go with those. And the first one is for Mindy. The person says that I am new to your writing and where would you suggest starting? And I'm gonna have you answer that, and then I think Olivia and I will also answer where people should start with your writing.
Oh, great. It's all on me. Great. You know, my answer to that is it kind of depends on what kind of books you already like.
Mhm,
So this one is has magical elements and it's like set in a very contemporary world, like a normal contemporary world. It's a little bit of a small town. And like if you like the magic and if you like, talking about family history, this is the book for you. But if you're more into like real world, no magic at all, if you like an urban setting, like I would say maybe one of my uptown books written as Ruby Lane. Um, my personal favorite is House Rules, which is also about 40 something people who they are long divorced and um, because the rent is so high in New York City, they end up living together once again. So if that's the kind of thing that you think might be your thing, that's a good if you like stories about doctors, which is another thing I touched on. I have a series called Practice Perfect. Maybe if you like a hockey story with the doctor story mixed up together, then I would say like try Hard Knocks. But it really kind of depends on the things that you like. That one is also written as Ruby Lang. It kind of depends on what you like. And so I don't know. If you do, answer in the chat, maybe I can point you to something more specific, but like those are also a little bit kind of some personal favorites that I've woven in there.
I would put in I love Glowing Life of Lian Wu, and I think everyone should read it if they are interested in the romance. One of the things that Olivia and I had sort of priorly talked about that we love about your work is how you write these really complicated female friendships and then familial relationships in Lian Wu with characters who you know love each other, but sometimes that's not told in a way like it can be complicated and nuanced and really textured. And like in Practice Perfect, these three women who are running this practice together, there's kind of a little bit of a disagreement that spills out across the series and gets resolved beautifully at the end. And I remember reading that series as you were publishing it and just being like, holy crap, like no one else is writing female friendships in a way that feels very true to my experiences of them in terms of all the nuance. And I mean, I think you're unparalleled in that regard.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a question for both of you. So the person writes, I've known you both as writers of contemporary romance, and you're now exploring paranormal and this kind of magical realism. I'm curious about how you came to sort of switch genres a little bit. Olivia, would you like to take that one first?
Sure. I mean, the one thing I would say is that I actually always wrote in other subgenres. It's just that I never published in
Hmm.
other subgenres. I actually wrote two futuristic romances
Hmm.
in the late 2010s, which again will never see the light of day for various reasons. But because just like I always read the gamut of heat levels in romance, I've always read almost all subgenres. So I read historical and sci-fi and paranormal and
Hmm.
like suspense and all those types, mystery, all of it. And I'm kind of like some things I think I'm more suited to writing than others. But
Hmm.
like I think always sort of futuristic or paranormal, some sort of speculative fiction was
Hmm.
always something that I had wanted to do and actually had done.
Yeah.
But now I actually publish it. In this case.
Do you think that you
Uh,
would ever write a historical?
no.
Mm.
Because I would be too concerned about getting something the investment in research for like again, it's been a long time since I've been a historian, but even so, the material culture was never at Colonial Williamsburg you got more into material culture, but like I wouldn't want to get things wrong. Like I'm constitutionally incapable of writing like a wallpaper profession or like a wallpaper historical, and it would take so much work. And at some point, and I would just be so afraid of getting something wrong, but like, then how do you balance the specificity of the history with
Hmm.
the romance? And I'm not sure I could get that balance right. And I would just be
Hmm.
scared about getting something incorrect and having like my former advisor like yell at me. Like Chuck Cohen like shows up at my house. How dare you? How dare you, Olivia? So no, but almost anything else, yeah.
Okay, very good. Mindy, what about you? Why did you change subgenres a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, so the Glowing Life of Lian Wu is still set in a contemporary, recognizable world.
Hmm.
Um, and the magic is a secret, in
Hmm.
a lot of ways. I think there are a lot of books, nowadays where I read, like, it's in a contemporary world, but also there's a magical town.
Hmm.
Right. But this is a very contained sort of like in the family. We aren't going to talk about this sort of magic. Um, and I have always wanted to also, like Olivia, I read across a lot of subgenres in romance, but I also started out probably like really imprinting. Is that like
Hmm.
imprinting on, or did they imprint on me? I don't really know how it goes. It was very highly influenced by stuff like, I read a lot of Robin McKinley when I was
Hmm.
like a teen, and I would spend a lot of time just like dreaming of like writing about like completely different worlds. But the thing that drew me to this in particular is like I got to write the contemporary world that I like understood and know, but also I got to write about ghosts and magic and things like that, and also talk about things that are unknowable.
Hmm.
Like this book is a lot about what we can't know.
Hmm.
So that was what really drew me to it. I really wanted to talk about the stuff that maybe you can't understand, that
Hmm.
lies sort of in between. Like history is like one of those things that we don't know exactly, like, we're not going to live it. We're not going to relive it. And the paranormal and history, in a lot of ways, are
Mhm.
sort of these worlds, to me at least, that are very similar
Mhm.
because there's stuff that you're not going to experience.
Mhm.
But you can think about it, you can dream about it, you can like experience it in your imagination. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. There is one more question, and so I will put it to you and then have you answer the last question and then maybe also wrap into your answer. What do you have coming up next and where can we find you? So we'll kind of do a big wrap up. So the question is, what's a profession that you'd like to use in a future work that you haven't yet written or researched? And the person sort of also asks, is romance author something you would potentially use or avoid? And so Olivia, I'm going to put that one to you first.
My original intention had not been to write a romance author because sometimes it can get a little meta and
Mhm.
self-referential in a way that makes me uncomfortable. Uh, but then again, I never intended Molly to actually be Sadie Brazen. I
Mhm.
always knew from the beginning that the reason Carl was listening to the audiobooks by Sadie Brazen was not because of Sadie Brazen. It was because Molly was narrating those
Mhm.
audiobooks. Because that was my way of sort of having a little fun with that. Because fake IP is like my
Mhm.
favorite like ridiculous fake IP is my favorite thing to do. Um, and so I had no intention of ever introducing Sadie Brazen herself as a character, potentially a future main character for that reason. But I was told by my trusted and dear friend Emma Barry that that I had to. I don't know if you recall these conversations where you're like, no, like legitimately you're gonna have to make her a character in this and like make her the main character of a future book. I think the way that I'm going to try to get around some of the self-referentiality is the fact that she's writing in a subgenre which is not mine. So even though one could say that I dabbled a little bit with the monster romance subgenre, but I think that she has a little more fun with she's not as worried about like realism in her books. Like she is not stuck on that as much as I am. And so I'm gonna have to work hard to, but I do, assuming that there'll be a third book in the series, that it would be her book, you
So when
know.
that comes out, everyone, it's my fault.
So if it's unbearable and self-referential, then blame it on Emma, not me.
Very fair. Very fair. Mindy, what about you? What is a profession that you'd like to use in a future work you have not yet written or researched?
Oh my gosh. Mostly I don't research a lot of professions in this world. So I think I would like to do more visual artists.
Mhm.
Um, and this is partially inspired, thank you very much, by when Olivia Dade, who has been inspiring me with a lot of really amazing art.
Mhm.
I don't know if all of you know this, but like Olivia loves like to look at and has a great eye for art.
Mhm.
And it is something that I have, as a result of her sending me pictures and also sometimes the stories of behind these women artists, for
Mhm.
instance, I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. And also, I hate to say this, but in the last few years, I've gotten a little bit like in my rut and a little bit numb. And it's been a lovely to just look at all these pictures and that she sent me and learn more about them. So that's something I would like to do. As for me, I have written a writer before in my life, and it was in this really teeny novella called I Am Trying to Break Your Heart. Um, and he is a writer of, I would say, YA fantasy with a love
Mhm.
story that sort of weaves through it. And the female main character is maybe the inspiration
Mhm.
for the unlikable main character in the book. And I also, again, like, I didn't want to make it too self-referential. I did try to put in some more realistic aspects of it. He's not a really big bestseller. One of his friends is though. And so he has another job, and he writes in a sort of dingy basement sometimes. And, it a lot of the times he and the friend in the book, like they will do these writing sprints that involve, like, if you don't get 1,000 words by like the end of the hour, you have to donate $5 to the Flat Earth Society or something else repulsive to them. So like I tried to put some of that real writer energy into it, but who knows. We all try to be realistic about our professions, but also people have very different experiences of it depending on like where you are in your career. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough.
That novella is amazing and
Oh, thank
everyone
you.
should read it, and like it's messy and like so sexy and so human and like really affirming in ways, even though it is also like very complicated in ways and will break your heart. So I highly recommend that one. I would love to hear what both of you have going up next. Like, I know we're talking about a book that just came out and a book that's coming out in a few days, but hey, we're always looking to toward the future. So what's coming up next for you on the horizon, and where can people find you on the line after today?
I just want to add that both Emma and Mindy are like masters of like short form, like novellas, shorter stories. One of two of like my favorite, I love The Long Run. That Mindy,
Mhm.
you've republished that, right?
Yeah, it is
Okay.
available like in audio too. So that's kind of nice if
Right.
anybody's
Which
interested in that.
is this beautiful novella. It's set in this apartment building in New York, and it's
Mhm.
just so voicey and such a wonderful sense of place, and like again older characters, and it's just
Mhm.
so wistful and rueful and like warm and funny and everything that like Mindy is and that I love. And like The Fourth Estate
Mhm.
by Emma is one of like I read a lot of Emma's books. She reads a lot of mine ahead of time. And I had no feedback essentially on that one, other than like, I love this so much. Please write like 12 more just like this, because it's just again very sense of work, and it is really again sense of place, sense of work, just really beautiful writing and characterization, and I just love their work so much. So please, if you have not read their work before, please read their work. If you like mine, you will enjoy theirs more, because they're so incredibly talented and like thoughtful and witty. They're amazing. So next year, I have my next book that I know is coming out after Second Chance Romance is World's Okayest Oracle Reluctantly Seeks Demon, which is a follow-up. Zamram, the title was only 9 letters, so I decided to go so that the average is like a normal time. And it is a down on her luck, like not particularly powerful oracle named Gwen, who suddenly finds herself very powerful. It's actually, I think about Mindy,
Yeah,
there's
that
some
I've
overlap.
yeah, and
And
I love the way she finds out how her power is powered up. Anyway.
right. And so she has to try to help save the world alongside go seek out a demon from again 20 years ago. I really do like that things again, I really like easy timelines. And I like people in their late 30s at least, or older, with a demon who watched her sort of basically destroy her own life 20 years ago and was part of it. And she never really wanted to see him again, but now she has to, and they've got to save the world together. So
And he is the tenderest, most
Mhm.
dreamy demon ever. Anyway.
he's starchy and uptight, but also really, really lovely.
Mhm.
And Emma, you have
Yes.
somewhere maybe next fall, we're not quite sure the exact date yet, is when You, Me, and the Conspiracy will be out,
That
correct?
will drop next fall. It's some date unknown. Yep. And what about you, Mindy?
I do not have any thing really that is like in contract or anything like that, but one of the next books is likely going to be a sort of like practical magic meets Every Summer After. And it's about three sisters, a very magical lake, a very mischievous grandmother, and, well, her spirit at least. And you know, it's even though it's, I guess, technically maybe like women's fiction or a book club again, it's got three romances. Three romances. So
Mhm.
that is something that I hope you all look forward to and hope, you know, comes out sometime in a, you know, I hope I can give you a date for that. Thank you.
Excellent. We're all looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you guys were here and that you made the time, and everyone watching on YouTube, thank you. And for Love Sweet Arrow for having us and for indulging us while we ran over a little bit. So if anyone stuck around to the end, you're awesome. Thank you. And thanks for being here.
Thank you
Yes,
all so
thank you,
much.
everyone. And a big thank you to Mindy, Olivia, and Emma. It was lovely getting to listen in on your conversation.